Hello everyone, welcome to this module on connectivity to on-premises networks. My name is Rohit Rahi and I'm part of the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure team. So until now, we have talked about virtual cloud network and we have looked primarily at creating an internet gateway and a NAT gateway. If you recall from my previous module on virtual cloud network, we had a couple of demos, one on internet gateway and the other one on a NAT gateway. And we looked at things like reserved public IP, ephemeral public IP, etc. So we definitely looked in quite a lot of details on how you can connect to the public internet, right? Either using internet gateway or a NAT gateway. There are two more options which we really didn't discuss in a lot of details in the previous module on virtual cloud network. And these options are around VPN Connect and Fast Connect. So what do I mean by VPN Connect? VPN Connect is basically an option where you connect two different sites using IPsec protocol. So we'll look into more details, and there are two main options which are available here. The first is an OCI managed VPN service, which is offered for free. So you really don't pay for anything except the underlying resources. And then the second option is you can run your own software VPN. If you have a Linux VM, you could install your own software like Librison and you could run it yourself. But remember, the first option here, the OCI managed VPN service, is offered for free. It's a standard VPN between two different sites. One site being your Oracle Cloud environment, other site being your on-premises environment. The third option we have is Fast Connect. Fast Connect, as the name specifies here, gives you this consistent fast network performance, and you can get port speeds of 1 Gbps and 10 Gbps increments. And the whole idea of a fast connect is it is a private connection. So think about this as you having your own high occupancy vehicle lane in the internet. So your traffic doesn't go through the internet, you get your own private dedicated connectivity. That's number one. And then number two, like I said, the name specifies you get really fast, consistent performance. So you can go 10 Gbps and even higher if you want. And then, of course, there is an SLA around that. So the first option, public internet, we looked into the previous module on virtual cloud network. In this particular module, we are going to look in more details around VPN and Fast Connect. So before we get into the details, let's look at some of the basics of VPN, right? VPN basically uses, using a public network, you make end-to-end connection between two private networks in a secure fashion using a standard protocol like IPsec, right? So this is basically how the VPN works. You have two different networks here. There's a private network 1, private network 2, and they want to create a connection, end-to-end connection over an unsecure channel like an internet, and using VPN, they could do that. Now, what are some of the key characteristics we talk about, right? The first thing in a VPN is this thing called a tunnel. A tunnel is nothing but a way to deliver packets through the internet to RFC 1918 addresses, meaning private network addresses here. There is authentication, where basically you have to authenticate who you are. The really important piece here is encryption. Packets need to be encrypted so they cannot be sniffed over the public internet. So the packets can come unencrypted here, but right as they enter this tunnel, they are encrypted over this tunnel. And there are two different kinds of routing which are supported here. One is static routing, when you configure a router to send traffic for particular destinations in pre-configured directions, and the other is BGP, dynamic routing, which where we use a routing protocol like BGP to figure out what paths traffic should take. It used to happen that OCI only supported static routing for a while, but now we support both static and dynamic routing, and I'll show this in the demo when we go into the demo. Now, IPsec, when you talk about, there are two modes. One is called a transport mode, where IPsec encrypts and authenticates only the actual payload of the packet, and the header information stays intact. The other mode is called the tunnel mode, which we talked about here, where IPsec encrypts and authenticates the entire packet. After encryption, the packet is then encapsulated to form a new IP packet that has different header information. Now, in our case, in case of OCI, we only support tunnel mode. we don't support transport mode, right? So if this exam comes up in the exam or something, just remember that OCI supports tunnel mode and not the transport mode. Well, that was the basics uh, of VPN. Let's look at some other details. As you recall from the previous module, we did look into this gateway called a dynamic routing gateway. So anytime you have your on-prem environment and you want to connect to the on-prem environment, let's say you have a database running here, you would use this gateway in OCI called a dynamic routing gateway. So it's a virtual router that is sitting at the edge, and it provides a path between your private subnets and your on-prem environment. So think about this as any situations where you want to connect other than internet, you would use a DRG. Now, DRG is used both for VPN as well as Fast Connect. So both these options are actually supported on DRG, and we'll look into this as we get into more details in the demo. After attaching a DRG, you must add a route for the DRG in the VCN's route table to enable traffic flow. This is pretty standard. We saw this earlier in the VCN module. If you don't add this route, there's the packets here get black hole. They have no way to figure out that they have to go to on-premises through this gateway here, right? So you have to add this route, and then of course you can have security list or network security groups here to secure your subnets and your resources running in them. DRG is a standalone object, so you create it separately, and then you must attach it to a VCN. VCN and DRG have one-to-one relationship. It means one VCN can only have one DRG, and one DRG can be attached to only a single VCN at a time. So let's look at some of these details on the VPN Connect feature itself. Like I said earlier, VPN Connect is a managed VPN service which securely connects your on-prem environments to OCI VCN through an IPsec VPN connection. VPN Connect ensures secure remote connectivity via standard industry standard IPsec encryption. Bandwidth is dependent on the customer's access to the internet and general internet congestion. Typically, we have seen the bandwidths can be much higher, but the whole idea of using a VPN Connect is to run proof of concepts, right? If you have any requirements around running enterprise apps, our guidance is to use Fast Connect and not use VPN Connect. VPN Connect is offered for free, so there is no charge for using the service. And like I said, customer proof of concepts usually start as a VPN, and then they morph into Fast Connect designs as you move into production environments. Now, important thing to keep in mind: OCI provisions redundant VPN tunnels located on physically and logically isolated tunnel endpoints. So what we do is, coming out of DRG, you get two different tunnels here, and we manage those tunnels on physically and logically redundant hardware. So it's not like the tunnels are running on the same hardware and just the hardware goes down, the tunnels go down. The whole idea of having these redundant tunnels is that you get some kind of high availability, right? And we manage that on our side. But it's our practice. We give you two tunnels, and is our recommendation for you to use both tunnels. Now, when I go into the demo, I'll show I'll just provision one tunnel, but just for the lack of time. But you can actually see that we provide two tunnels when you create the IPsec connection. Now, how does this whole thing work? Well, let me just run this animation here. So first thing here is you have your on-prem environment, right? And we have this particular address space. In fact, I'll be using the same address space in my demo. The first thing, important thing to notice on on-prem environment is you have this thing called CPE object. CPE object is the virtual representation of the actual network device, which some people call CPE, customer premises equipment, which terminates the IPsec tunnel. It could be a router, it could be a firewall, or it could be a virtual appliance supporting IPsec running on premises, right? And you have a long list of devices here which are available on our documentation page, and the configuration for those devices, the supported devices, right? And so there's a good chance whatever devices you are running today would be supported by the OCI VPN Connect service. Right here is the internet. It's the unsecured channel, and you want to connect your resources running here. Let's say I'm running a database here to your on-prem environment using the VPN. So what you do is you create this tunnel, as we talked about in the previous slides, and you can use either static routing or dynamic routing, and then your resources are here, and you create this DRG, and of course you have to do the route table so the packets can go from here to the DRG, and you also create your network security group or security list to secure your subnets or your instances, right? So this is the pretty standard setup. In the previous module we looked into here, we had internet gateway, we had NAT gateway, and then we went to the internet using those gateways, right? In this case, we are going through a DRG, and then we are going to an on-prem environment, right? Not just sitting as going out to the internet. So how does this whole thing work? Well, there are a bunch of steps here, and it's actually rather straightforward. But let me just quickly run through the steps here, right? First thing you do is create a virtual cloud network. Pretty straightforward. We have seen that in the previous lecture series on VCN. Then we create a DRG. We have not created a DRG until now, but we'll go and do that. You have to attach your DRG to your VCN, right? Remember, they have a one-to-one relationship, and DRG and VCN are standalone. So once you create it, you have to attach it here. Then you have to attach your route table to send the traffic to the DRG. Then you create a CPE object, which is your on-prem, which is basically a virtual representation of your on-prem router, and you would get this IP address running from your router here, right? So your whatever router you're running here will have an public IP address, and there are things like if your CPE is behind a NAT device, what to do and all that. It gets into more complex details, which we will cover in our level 200 module. But this CPE device basically will have a public IP address. So you create the CPE object in OCI, and you add the public IP address. Then on the DRG, you create your IPsec tunnels. So you create these IPsec tunnels here, and then between CP and DRG, and you could choose to use a static route, or you could choose to use a BGP route, right? So you could decide what kind of routing I want. Right now you can see there's a static route here, and then the last step is you configure your on-premises CP router. So I'm going to run through these steps in the next module, where will run through these steps, and I will show you a tunnel being created and the IPsec tunnels being provisioned. So thank you for joining this lecture. If you have time, please join me in the next lecture, where we'll talk about the VPN Connect demo. Thank you.